And we are live.
Okay. So let's see. Oh my goodness. Like a million screens up over here. Okay, so our debate focuses on service delivery for transition age youth and adults, empowerment versus care. As described by our course, the pursuit of self-sufficiency and independence is highly valued in our society and is reflected in many legislative laws and funding initiatives associated with individuals with disabilities. Despite such efforts, research findings support the fact that individuals with disabilities are not afforded the same opportunities as those without disabilities in determining their post-school choices and outcomes. Instead, people with disabilities, especially those with severe disabilities, find themselves trapped in a system of care where their post-school choices are determined by others because of barriers related to attitudes, funding, rehabilitation, and healthcare. On the other side, service providers are concerned with issues related to liability in service provision. We're considering both sides of the issue, and we have developed our debate.
Okay, so for our debate, we are going to start off with an introduction of the group members and their positions. My name is Edward Sidley. I'm coming from New Jersey, and as far as experience in the field, I've worked with individuals in the transition age group. I'm currently working with children ages 8 to 10, 11 years old. My position in this debate is as a stater and a prover for the empowerment side. And next is Edwina Jones.
My name is Edwina Jones. I live outside of the Washington, D.C. area. I live about 30 minutes outside of the District of Columbia. I have worked with various individuals in intellectual disability and autism population, mainly in day support programs that are supposed to offer transition services and also residential services and group homes. And I currently work with children providing in-home support, behavior services, and they range from about age 3, my youngest is 3, and my oldest is 17 years of age. I am an attacker opposing the empowerment side.
Okay, and next is going to be Courtney.
Okay, my name is Courtney Galloway. I am debating from South Bend, Indiana. My position in this debate will be the stater or prover for the care side. I currently work as an RBT at a autism clinic that specializes in serving children with autism ages 5 to 18.
And next is Shelby.
My name is Shelby Renfro. I'm debating from Cleveland, Ohio today. I am on the opposing the care side, the attacker. Experience-wise, I'm the behaviorist at a residential unit for kids with autism. We have ages 8 to 21. And while working there, I've helped with 6 clients process into their forever homes or transition into the adult world.
Okay, cool. So those are the 4 people in our debate group. And we thought it was a good idea to start off just to introduce some of the issues that individuals with ASD, diagnosed with ASD, face during the transition period. So to start off, research shows that individuals leave schools ill-prepared for the social and communication skills necessary for life success after school. So as these individuals are reaching transition age between childhood and adulthood, a large percentage do not have the skills necessary to enter the workforce or to further their education. This issue occurs despite it's a mandated law that requires transitional planning for as part of IEPs, beginning at age 16, but actually it should start closer to the age of 14, 15 years old. So essentially, the transition process is crucial because in just a few short years, from age 14, 15, 16, to 21, we're preparing these individuals for the rest of their lives. So that's the first part. The second part of the issues that they're facing is just the same issues that typically developing peers, issues that we faced transitioning from lower school up into high school and beyond. These are environmental, social, and academic. And the environmental part of it would be going to a new school, new job, extracurricular activities. Think of your own experiences when you were 14, 15, 16 years old. So a lot of exciting stuff, but at the same time, anxiety provoking. So now a lot of this can be magnified if you're an individual diagnosed with ASD. Academically, different things are expected of students for typically developing, as well as with disabilities. So think of, for the population we're talking about, think about early learning, the verbal operants, tax, listener responding, motor imitation, learning to read. These things are important, but as they get older, these skills are now going to be used for more application, daily living skills, vocational training, things that will increase independence. So again, it's a step up. It's exciting, but can also be anxiety provoking. The next one is socially. Increased time away from home means more interaction with others in the community, and social communication is definitely one of the deficits that we see in the ASD population. So at the end of it, this causes stress to the family unit. Stress comes from the individual's lack of autonomy, the lack of independence, and also vulnerability. So if you're a family member or a parent of an individual with ASD in the transition age and they're out more, you're concerned about their safety and their well-being. So 60% of adult-age individuals with ASD live at home, and so this just shows there's a need for more post-secondary options for these individuals. So these are the issues heading into it. And my position is that, my claim is that transitional and adult services designed for empowerment with individuals diagnosed with ASD are more optimal than care services. I believe it's both our ethical responsibility as well as our legal responsibility to seek methods of empowerment for individuals who are transitioning into adulthood. One of the core elements of the core ethical principles is respecting autonomy, in which it is said to respect one's autonomy means to promote his or her independence or self-sufficiency. That's from Bailey and Birch, 2016. Empowerment goals look to increase autonomy and create a less restrictive environment. So looking at the transition services, that part is the ethical responsibility I feel that we have to empower, not just provide care, but also the legal responsibility is already there. It's already law. So the Individuals with Disabilities Act 2004 requires the following. Transition services as a results-oriented process focused on improving the functional and academic achievement of a child with disability, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, independent living, and community participation. This is all done with appropriate measurable goals based on age and appropriate transition assessments. So it includes instruction, related services, and community experiences, development of employment, daily living skills, and functional vocational training. I think that right there, to me, that's saying that the law says we should be looking to empower. We should be looking to, during this age, really promoting autonomy. And the idea is that for the individual to have more say and more of a hand in their day-to-day life, as well as the direction of their life. I said before, this process should be starting at 16 or earlier. And transitional planning is a collaborative process. It's similar to an IEP. It includes parents, teachers, professionals, and it's also best practice to include the student whenever possible, or as much as possible. Another example, as far as direction of transitional services and the opportunities that are available now, even though the opportunities are lacking, is an example is Project Search with ASD supports. So for individuals still in high school, as they begin the transition process to prepare them to high school, this is like a job training combined with ABA intervention. So it includes on-site ABA instruction, on-site ABA specialist consultation, and intensive staff training in ABA and in the project search model. So this is just something that I think we should see more of to help empower individuals in this age group. So employment for adults with ASD, I think, goes both ways. We need to help more in two different ways. One, we need to develop jobs for individuals with ASD, so the jobs themselves need to be created. And the second part is that we need to develop the skills for individuals with ASD for jobs. So it's coming at it from both sides. We need to create more jobs for them, and we need to create and develop more skills for them as well. It's a lot, but I do think it's possible. Why? I look at the significant process of early intervention and childhood intervention and ABA services, and I think that in the last 20 to 30 years, those have come a long way. Well, now we need to start focusing on this age group a lot more, because those 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9-year-olds that you see, they're all going to be entering transition and adult age in the next 5 to 10 years. The population is going to keep growing. So I think it's imperative we begin to research and implement more interventions which can empower them through the transition process and adulthood. So that's my part. Real quick, I want to show, we'll have sources at the end, but a lot of my information on transitional sources I had from textbooks, from coursework. One is Learners on the Autism Spectrum, and that's by Buron and Wolfberg. Autism Spectrum Disorder in Children and Adolescents, Wilkinson, and then also our textbook, Ethics for Behavior Analysts. So that is my part, and I'm going to pass it off now to Edwina.
Ed brought up a lot of good points, and actually towards the end, he talked about. Is there a reason why it's an echo? No, I'm hearing an echo. Okay. To start, actually, my counterpart Ed did bring a lot of interesting issues, and I liked how he brought up the part that we have a lot of younger children out that we're servicing who will grow into adults. So the need for transitional services are very crucial and are very critical. I'm going to start off with some statistics. There was a study done by the National Longitudinal Transition Service. This was a fund that was a program that was funded by the U.S. Department of Education along with the Autism Speaks website. As just a few statistics, it says 50% of individuals with autism spectrum disorder turn 18 each year in the United States. And over half of those would never hold employment nor enroll in any type of vocational training or college. And this is what's very alarming, that even these students who are transitioning that become adults, because they're not receiving adequate services through these programs that are built to empower them. The National Longitudinal Transition Study stated that an adult with autism's estimated life cost will be from 1.4 million to 2.3 million. And this is because of systems that have been put in place to empower these young adults to become, adults. Just to give you a quick outline of some of the things that I'm going to touch on today. The first part is a lack of appropriate care services to meet the needs and the growing demands of individuals with ASD. And the second area of concern is the lack of qualified staff. A third area of concern would be that long-term independence for these adults is significantly lower than those in transitional services. And then another point is how poorly these transition services are implemented. And last but not least is the poor attitude and lack of understanding of the caregivers and professionals that work with these individuals. A lot of them do not feel that these individuals have the potential to work, live, and contribute to society. It was very interesting when a survey was done on parents whose children had gone through the transition process. And one of the points that was brought up to parents is the lack of individual, the lack of how individualized these services were. As we all know with autism, we're well familiar with autism, that when you look at different individuals that we work with, there's not, you can't group them into one category. Each one of them is very specific in their care. And if you look, you may have one on the side who may be, the term that I hate to use is low functioning, and then you have those that are twice exceptional who, are, what you would consider, I think one of textbooks labeled them as little professors. So what happened? One of the problems with these transitional services is that the programs are not able to meet the individual needs of the individual. Studies have shown that some professionals, and I'll quote one parent stated that a teacher said to them that, I'm really frustrated because if he can read at a college level, why can't he not remember to complete his assignments? So this is the kind of attitudes that these professionals that are men that are employed to provide services for these individuals have. And also, one researcher said that, a lot of these empowerment services try to do a one-size-fits-all. And so they're not promoting any type of individualized education. So a lot of the times when the students are in these programs, they're failing because their individual needs are not being met. You cannot treat John, who has Asperger's, with, Jack, who has, some other label on the spectrum. And the second point is the lack of qualified staff. Research shows that 23% of students that have autism, only 23% of students who have autism actually have an involved vocational rehabilitation counselor. And only 15 to 16% of these students with autism have participation from an outside agency. Last week, I was actually given the opportunity to sit in a transitional meeting held by Fairfax County. For some of you guys, if you don't, who don't know Fairfax County, I think it's labeled I know definitely it's in the top 100 school districts. And Fairfax County is a county that houses, it serves areas like McLean, where we have some of our senators, our politicians live there. So it's one of the counties where parents push, they actually want their children to go to schools in Fairfax County because of the better education services that is provided. So when I sat in this meeting, it was a meeting where we had support coordinators who, we call them support coordinators in Virginia, but I guess the rest of the state will call them caseworkers. And it was a transitional meeting with parents and teachers and service coordinators and executives at Fairfax County. And one of the things that was brought up is the fact that there aren't enough resources, for even the support coordinators. So they feel that they're not even fully equipped to provide transitional services. They also feel like there's not enough funding, at all. And I'll give you an example. I have a friend who, her son has, he's on the spectrum. He's functioning about an 8th grade level, age 23. So he's transitioned out of the school system. And in our, on my end, in the state of Virginia and also in the DC metropolitan, area, which covers Maryland, DC, and Northern Virginia, a lot of our individuals, there are two waivers that individuals can sit on. One of them is the ID waiver, and that's, you have to have a diagnosed intellectual disability. And then the others are grouped into a waiver called a DD waiver. And the DD waiver is more for people who may not have, who kind of have the intellectual capacity to be able to work or even, seek employment. And a lot of our individuals that have autism, especially those with the quote unquote higher functioning, they fall into this waiver called a DD waiver. And with the DD waiver, they receive less services and less funding. So a lot of the times there's not enough funding to provide for them, you know, employment services or even like a vocational rehab specialist or things like that. So unless their parents actually have the money to provide, you know, to either hire a job coach or some of these individuals do not have access to it at all. So, you know, that was one of the points that was actually brought up is, you know, a lack of enough training and even funding to hire qualified staff or even equip, you know, transition coordinators and job coaches to provide for these needs. And along with, you know, having, you know, lack of qualified staff is a lack of professional knowledge about the population. A survey done, a lot of the parents stated that, you know, the people that they've collaborated knew very little about their child's diagnosis. A lot of parents express frustration because if you don't know about my child's, you know, diagnosis, how can you provide services for them? And because of this lack of knowledge of the population, a lot of these parents, a lot of these professionals kind of develop these stereotypes, and it leads them to have low expectations of the, you know, students with ASD. A report stated a lot of parents, you know, felt like their children were treated unfairly by teachers and other professionals because they did not fully understand their disorder. And the third point, that brings me to the third point is, you know, with transitional services, a research was conducted in Connecticut, I believe it was 2012. And when that research was conducted, a lot of parents stated that their child, you know, they felt like that the goals that were set for their children were very unrealistic, and they wish that the transition services would have started earlier, maybe 6th grade instead of waiting to age 14 or age 16, which, you know, the IDEA Act mandates. So these students who are in these transitional services were less likely to have goals related to independent living. So even though they're in these services that are built to empower them, but research has shows that the goals that have been created for them is not really promoting them to live independent lives. Again, this comes into the stereotype and the stigmas that these unqualified professionals have about these individuals. I'll give, you know, an example. When I was working in a vocational rehabilitation treatment, you know, I started out as a substitute teacher there. And one of the things that I found was, you know, the programs that were built to, you know, that were built into the schedule. I mean, some of the goals were simple as, you know, the individual was folding towels. So for a whole year, they're learning how to fold towels. They're learning how to tie trash bags. So how was that really empowering them to live independent where, you know, the goals are so, I guess the best term would be they're so low function. Their goals are basically set for individuals that are low functioning. I mean, you know, I don't see myself as a parent putting my child in a program where all he's learning is how to fold towels and take out trash. I can do that at home. So one of the other issues that was brought up is that when it applies to sheltered employment, now in the waiver services, you have competitive employment and you have sheltered employment. Competitive employment is something that you and I would engage in, where we go out and we work with others, you know, like us, and we earn, you know, a paycheck that is, you know, enough to carry our needs for at least for the next 2 weeks or for the month. But study shows that 39 out of every person, every student who's diagnosed with autism is actually placed, when they're going to these transition services, they're only offered competitive employment. They're not offered competitive employment, but sheltered employment. So they're actually grouped into like these facilities where they're working with other individuals like them, and which of course is not promoting independence if you're only grouped with people like you. And they're in the shelter programs where they're learning how to, to do, simple things like, again, maybe equipping them to work in a restaurant, washing dishes, so they're training them, but they're not actually offering them employment. So, so actually, a study was done by researchers at a university, and what the study showed that 46% of adults with autism, and actually 40% of family members stated that they were never encouraged, or the child was never encouraged to seek employment, or even post-secondary education when they're in these services. And that leads me to the point of how transition services are implemented, which is one of the biggest problems that parents face, is that the schools actually are failing to meet the minimum levels of compliance with federal transition mandates involving, student involvement, parent involvement, and into these goals. So the goal, the way the transition services are being implemented, they're not following what federal mandates are to draw. And, Ed had brought up the point that, the student himself should be the center of that. But actually, a lot of these research has shown that a lot of these schools are failing in this department, and primarily because of lack of funding. Why create a goal for this person where we don't have the funding or the services to meet this goal? So instead, parents are not even, their input, and even the input of the parent is not even solicited, because in actuality there aren't any, there's not enough funding to provide for these services. Again, research says that 62 to 67% of families with students with autism stated that they never received information about services after high school. And I can attest to this because I have a lot of parents who are our friends, acquaintances who have children on the spectrum, and they're said, we were never taught about this. We were never informed about these services. So a lot of them decide, of course, to keep their child at home because they're looking at these services that are built to empower them are not doing it. So it's just easier for me to keep my child at home and hire a caregiver to sit with them at home. So lastly, one of the things that parents brought up again is the attitude of these professionals, and how they view their children. So it comes up to the point where actually a parent was there was a meeting held in New York City where parents said that a lot of these services were forcing their students to engage in or participate in activities that does not fit their needs. So it goes, to the point to say, well, what do we do? I'm not arguing that these transitional services or these services do not empower the individuals. My point that I am, trying to convey to the group and to the rest of our class members and to anybody who's watching this video is what do we do as educators, as advocates at the transition level before these individuals actually transition out of high school? What efforts can we make to make sure that they, that they are aware of the choices available, that their parents are being pulled in to participate in the services? And also, what do we do? What do we do as educators and as advocates in the field to empower these teachers, vocational rehab specialists, and even caseworkers to not only just place these individuals in these empowerment services, but actually to make sure that their specific needs are being met, that, we're not doing a one-size-fits-all program, but actually, each student's characteristics, their strengths and their weaknesses are actually considered before being placed into these services that are failing them as adults. I mean, I know, I've read, research that says a lot of parents actually, at least 75% of parents at least once, would transition their child out of one program to another. When they actually move into another program, they're facing the same problems. So this ends my portion of the debate.
Okay, up next is Courtney for the care side.
Okay, so transition planning is complex, multi-step endeavor that combines a number of different stakeholders that all work together for the best outcome and success for the students. All parties involved have legal and procedural protocol that must be followed if the transition is to occur seamlessly with the student's interests and skill set in mind. The two major laws that oversee and regulate transition services are the Individuals with Disabilities Education and Improvement Act of 2004 and the Rehabilitation Act and its amendments. So each law has specific procedures and protocols that must be followed by service providers. These rigorous legal standards, as well as others governing each individual service provider, demonstrate that the student needs to be counseled and assisted in making the best decisions regarding the trajectory and the outcomes of their individualized transition plan. The care side of this debate does not advocate for the complete disregard of a student's hopes and dreams for their future. It does say, however, that those desires need to be addressed in a systematic way, and we need to take into consideration, it needs to be taken into consideration along with that student's strengths and weaknesses, their skill set, available resources in the community, and all of the complex legal and procedural requirements involved. Intensive support and guidance in making appropriate decisions that will help each student obtain a job and achieve the best results in the long term is necessary and in the student's best interest. Wordle and Cedar, in their article, Research and Practical Considerations for Rehabilitation Transition Collaboration, found that almost 60% of all students, that includes those with disabilities and those without, were unable to identify traits important to their desired career and could not describe a pathway to securing employment, even though they were able to choose a desired job. This figure clearly shows that employment services and guidance are greatly needed to help students identify skills for their career choices, as well as how to go about securing the job they want. One such employment service for people with disabilities is vocational rehab. The United States federal government recognizes the importance of vocational rehab and has advocated for its increased involvement in transition planning. Recent additions to the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 within the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act reinforces the partnership and outlines the role of voc rehab in transition planning beginning while students are in high school. Involvement of vocational rehab services in transition has been shown to increase the likelihood that a student will succeed after high school. One pretty good example of vocational services that has achieved some very good results is the Bridges from School to Work program established by the Marriott Foundation for People with Disabilities in 1989. This program currently operates 9 standardized programs in urban cities across the country, which offer assistance in career counseling and training, job placement secured by the Bridges program, and follow-up support and tracking. They assist students with disabilities in selecting a career path that meets their skill set and acquiring any necessary skills for the career outside of what they already have, obtaining a job in the community, and maintaining employment. This regimented program demonstrates that with consistent support and guidance from service providers, a student with a disability can obtain and maintain paid work in the community. Our code of ethics also speaks to the responsibility of service providers in the transition process. Our treatment must be ethical and effective while taking the student's best interest into consideration. Code 6.0 states that a service provider can be defined as an entity that can make decisions in the client's best interest if this is needed. This speaks to the need for balance between a student's desires and the service provider's responsibility to make sure that they achieve the best outcomes they're capable of. This is based on their level of functioning, the skills that need to be learned for their career choice, and the availability of resources in their area, among a lot of other things. So our main responsibility is to students, which includes making sure their goals are attainable and in their best interest. This requires that transition services be a collaboration between students and the service providers involved in their transition.
Okay, next up is Shelby, and she's attacking the care side.
First, I just want to address some of the elements that Edwana brought up whenever she was speaking. She said a lot of the people here, we call them service coordinators, that the service coordinators don't know the clients that they're helping to transition. And I know, at least from my experience, the entire process of transitioning to an adult home in the adult world takes at the very least a year. And those service coordinators.
Gone?
Sorry, cut out. But they come and observe the children. They'll ask the parents, the staff that work with them, what's the kid's favorite thing? What do they like to do? So that way, when the person transitions, they have a pretty good profile of what that person is like. And in my experience, we've tried to get them to come over on days that where the client's even struggling. So whenever they do transition, they even know how to work with that client when they're having an off day or what have you. Next, I want to say that empowerment will look different for each person with the diagnosis, because as we all know, everyone that has an ASD doesn't present in the same way. Mm-hmm. So she had mentioned, why would you want to send someone to a service where one of their goals is to fold towels? I get that. For someone that's quote unquote higher functioning, that's would be a annoying goal or something that they would see as useless. But for someone that's quote unquote lower functioning, maybe they need to learn how to fold towels. So that is empowering to them. So now I'm gonna get into it. Lack of sufficient care combined with the rising ASD population suggests that we as a society will not have the ability to care for the increasing number of individuals transitioning into the adult world. So empowerment will be necessary. And again, I've seen this firsthand. As I mentioned, I live in Ohio, but I work with a lot of clients that are actually from the Chicago area, because for some reason that area is lacking transition services for, you know, the 18 to 21 year olds. So they will come to where I work until they can then transition into that adult world. So this just shows that while transition services are improving, they need to improve in other places as well. Lack of physician training and comfort level account for a lack of quality care. Again, I've seen this firsthand. In Ohio, there's only one hospital that will accept patients with an ASD diagnosis, and I'm in Cleveland, and that hospital is in Cincinnati. So if we have to hospitalize someone, it's a 4-hour drive. Empowerment allows for some type of normalcy within an ASD person's life. Think about it. Whenever we turned 18, 19, 20, we moved out, went to college, and while they all might not necessarily be able to go to college, they could still, you know, move out into their group home, have roommates, more like their neurotypical peers or, you know, siblings. Empowerment supports one of the key elements of ABA, which is to respect a client's autonomy. And while ASD does present itself in different ways, as long as the clients are being taught, you know, ADLs from a young age, early intervention, they should be able to live in the least restrictive environment. So for some that may be, you know, a house that has to have locked doors, but for some that may have more Asperger's, there's no reason that just because they have that diagnosis that they shouldn't be able to live on their own or live in a group home or live in some type of transitional living facility. And lastly, it allows for the clients to play a role in their future instead of having it decided for them. I know that's not necessarily the case for all clients, say the nonverbal client who can't, tell you what they want their future to be. But I've had clients who very clearly have said, I want to go to college, and they're capable. And I think it's important that we include, when applicable, what the client wants for their future into their future. I have another client who he would like to go to college, but he knows he can't read. So he's now set his goal on, he wants to be a stocker at Walmart. And, that's a very attainable goal for him. And by allowing him to learn the skills to stock, that's what he's doing at school. He's learning how to stock shelves and how to, deal with like rude customers or whatever. It's empowering him to the best of his ability. That's my part of the debate.
Okay, great job, guys. As I was listening, I was trying to think of ways that we could kind of tie it together to end it. And I was thinking that as far as the empowerment side, I think that I probably can speak for all of us in saying that the goals of empowerment would be most desired, and the problem though is the reality that a lot of this is not being done right now. For the positions on the care side, a lot of it is talking about the reality of what is available, what's not available. So I guess the first part of it is, I think we can probably agree on that. Would you guys agree with that? Or
Yeah.
Yes.
so the next part then I would say is to kind of bring back to my just original point is that I think that there is a lack of focus, there's a lack of research, of resources, funding, but I think that at the end of the day it would be beneficial as a society to invest in more empowerment strategies, because like we're all talking about, the population is getting larger, and I think that the fact that it's not reality now doesn't mean that it can't be reality down the road. So like we're younger in this field. I think that we should be striving to make what would be, in my opinion, would be a better situation for people in the transition age and adult. Does anyone else have anything else that they want to add, or?
Ed, to add to that, when I was I'm doing research on it and even looking through the studies that were done. I mean, in conclusion, and this is where what really scares me with the new Department of Education. Is it the Secretary of Education, the one that was just appointed, Betty DeVoe? I mean, things like this, they really scare me, because they're, these individuals, they're falling through the cracks. And the reason why they're falling through the cracks is the lack of funding and the lack of, better tools to equip, the parents, the vocational rehab specialists. I mean, to hear studies that show that it costs us more money, to have, it costs us more money when these individuals actually fail through these empowerment services. So why not, if it's costing 1.4 million to 2.3 million for to care for these adults throughout their life, why not put that money into funding to better equip them as teens, early on from the high school age to that young adult age, so that way, when they become adults, we actually can, they're better equipped to live alone, and even, provide more services for them, that they can receive, highly individualized training, so they can function as adults in society, and not put money into, basically the whole point is putting money where it belongs. And these individuals, there's got to be better legislation pushed to help them. It's going to be an epidemic that if we don't address it now, later on, even with us, as educators, that it will come back to kind of, slap us in the face in the long run if nothing is done about it now.
Okay, very good. Is that good for everyone?
Yep.
Yeah.